Everyone, including the drover's dog, knows that Malcolm Turnbull simply doesn't cut the mustard. As I said yesterday, he couldn't lead a horse to water. What is just as bad, though, is that he doesn't seem to know whether to lead or follow. And now another massive test looms. And if the form guide is anything to go by, you wouldn't back him to get it right with stolen money. The result of the postal vote on same-sex marriage will be out at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Assuming it's a yes vote, legislation will have to go to the Parliament to change the Marriage Act. Malcolm Turnbull has promised that will happen before Christmas. Mind you, can you have an illegally constituted Parliament voting on any legislation? That's the other issue. But to put it simply, the bill to change the Marriage Act has been sponsored by the West Australian Liberal Senator Dean Smith. It offers only limited protection, if any, to other critical freedoms. In other words, even advocates of same-sex marriage argue that the change to the Marriage Act should not confer a freedom on them to marry, but deny basic freedoms to others. Now, I voted yes in the postal vote, and if there's a move to not guarantee other freedoms, for example, religious freedom, people must be free to lead their lives according to their own beliefs, but if there's a move not to guarantee those, then I think all hell will break loose. The bill that Malcolm Turnbull seems to be lining up to support, sponsored by the West Australian Liberal Dean Smith, offers only limited religious protection. And indeed, Senator Smith suggested that religious freedom could be addressed through separate legislation, and that is plainly rubbish and unacceptable. And if the Prime Minister doesn't understand that, then he has to understand his leadership will be over. Enter a young man from Victoria, to whom I've spoken previously, the Liberal Senator James Paterson. He's 29 years of age, in fact he'll be 30 next week. He's smart, and he's in touch. There are stacks of young people like him who have voted yes, as he did, on the same-sex marriage issue, and share the same view that he has, that other freedoms must not be eroded. Well, as a result, yesterday Senator Paterson, released a draft bill to legalise same-sex marriage in Australia while preserving the freedoms of all Australians. As I said, he voted yes in the same-sex postal vote. Indeed, he's argued for same-sex marriage since way back in 2011. But as he said, I've never believed that allowing same-sex couples to marry needs to come at the expense of the freedoms of other Australians. I've always argued, he said, that Parliament is capable of ensuring there are no negative consequences for anyone else from allowing gay Australians to marry. And he's released this draft bill that achieves two important objectives, very simple. It validates same-sex marriage and protects a raft of other freedoms. The bill, sponsored by the West Australian Liberal Senator Dean Smith, does none of this. It changes the Marriage Act to provide for same-sex marriage, but virtually says we'll worry about the other stuff later. The Prime Minister now has a real dilemma. Does he back the West Australian bill or the James Paterson bill? At a time when people despair of what is thrown up to us as political representation, this young man from Victoria, as I said, who'll be 30 next week, gives us all hope. And he kicked the ball right into the court of Malcolm Turnbull and Bill Shorten yesterday by reminding his own Prime Minister that on September 15, the Prime Minister said, quote, I just want to reassure Australians that as strongly as I believe in the right of same-sex couples to marry, even more strongly, if you like, do I believe in religious freedom. On the same day, the opposition leader said, I'm a supporter of marriage equality, but I've also been raised to be a person of faith. I can give this guarantee to the Australian people. I and the Labor Party will not support legislation which impinges upon religious freedom in this country. So therefore, acceptance of the James Paterson bill should be plain sailing. Will it? There are jellybacks everywhere. Senator Paterson's on the line. James Paterson, good morning.
Thank you for having me, Alan.
Not at all. I suppose they would say that religious freedom is a little different from all the other freedoms that you seek to guarantee.
Well, I think it's one of our most fundamental freedoms. I think it goes hand in hand with freedom of conscience and with freedom of speech. And you made a really good point in your opening comment, Alan, which is that there are a lot of people who voted yes based on the promises and the assurances they were given by our political leaders that if they did vote yes, that there would be no negative consequences for religious freedom and that religious freedom would be protected.
Correct. You've had a day to digest the response from your own people. How are the numbers lining up?
I'm not actively counting numbers just yet, Alan. My first task yesterday was to put out the bill and explain it. And I had some positive feedback and I had some critical feedback, as I expected. But I'm pleased that a lot of Australians see that there are people who can be both in favour of same-sex marriage, but also think that we need to provide robust protection for everyone.
Definitely. So the first freedom that you're protecting is the freedom to marry. And then your bill ensures that ministers of religion and civil celebrants with a genuine belief in the traditional definition of marriage can't be forced to solemnise a same-sex wedding.
That's right.
That's simple principle. You don't compel someone to act against their conscience, you're saying.
Indeed. And I think that principle applied there should be applied universally, because
That's
it's
right.
wrong to do it to a priest. Isn't it wrong to do it to anyone else?
Good on you. You're too bright for them, you are. What you're saying is it shouldn't end there, that religious freedom is a universal human right, but there's no international law, you say, or you said yesterday, or legal instrument that says only ministers of religion enjoy this right and deserve to have it protected. You say that religious freedom extends to the congregation as well. Good comment.
That's exactly right, Alan. You can't be an individual and have the right to religious freedom but not be able to practice it. It doesn't mean anything if you can't practice it, if you can't live your life according to your values.
Good on you. It's very simple, isn't it? And you're saying, or you said yesterday, religious liberty and freedom of conscience are intimately linked.
Exactly, Alan. I mean, I'm personally not a religious person. I don't have religious faith. And there are others who aren't religious who, for secular reasons, entirely secular reasons, support a traditional version of marriage. Now, their own beliefs and their own values are no less worthy than someone that comes to the same conclusion because of religious faith. And so I think protections are necessary for them too.
Good on you. You have said yesterday, if it's wrong to force a priest to participate in a same-sex wedding against his belief, it should be wrong to force a florist or a photographer.
And sadly, Alan, from the international experience, from time to time those people are forced to participate in same-sex weddings, and if they refuse to, they're threatened with discrimination lawsuits that can end with their businesses being ruined and thousands of dollars of fines.
Absolutely. I mean, this is simple stuff, really. I mean, you're talking about a limited right of conscientious objection so that no one is compelled to participate in a same-sex wedding if it is inconsistent with their sincerely